Flashing lights. A black woman pulled over on a Richmond street. Officers already aggressive, already accusing her of matching a robbery suspect. They searched her car illegally, dismissed her questions, mocked her dignity. They had no idea who they'd just stopped. And when their captain arrived and recognized her face, everything they thought they knew shattered. This is a story of how one traffic stop exposed everything broken, and how grace became the path to fixing it. Before we get into this, I need to ask you something real. Have you ever been accused of something you didn't do simply because of how you look? Have you ever been treated like a criminal when you were completely innocent? If that's your experience, drop a comment right now, because Dr. Danielle Freeman knows exactly what that feels like. Danielle was 33 years old, a respected professional driving home on a Tuesday evening after a charity fundraiser in downtown Richmond. She hadn't just attended the event, she'd organized it. Youth Mentorship Program. Raised over $40,000. Spent 3 hours in heels and business attire, networking with city leaders, donors, community activists. Her voice was hoarse from speaking. Her feet ached. But she felt good, fulfilled, like she'd made a difference. The drive home was familiar. Same route she took every evening. Music playing softly. Mind wandering to the night's conversations. Already planning follow-up emails and thank you notes. She was tired but content. Just wanted to get home, take off the dress, and breathe. Then she saw the flashing lights in her rear-view mirror. Her heart sank. That familiar mix of confusion and dread. But Danielle knew the routine. Signal. Pull over safely. Hands on the steering wheel where they can see them. Stay calm. She'd been pulled over before. She knew how this went. She did everything right. But it didn't matter. 2 officers approached her window. Their tone was sharp before she could even say good evening. No pleasantries. No license and registration, please. Just immediate accusation. You match the description of a suspect fleeing a robbery nearby. Step out of the vehicle. Danielle's mind raced. Robbery? She'd been at a charity event with 200 witnesses for the past 3 hours. Officers. I think there's been a mistake. I'm coming from a fundraiser downtown. I haven't been anywhere near. I said step out of the vehicle. Now. The command cut through her explanation like she hadn't spoken at all. Danielle unbuckled her seatbelt, opened the door slowly, stepped onto the sidewalk. Hands visible, movements deliberate, voice calm despite the fear rising in her chest. One officer positioned himself in front of her while the second moved toward her trunk. We're going to search your vehicle. Danielle's legal training kicked in immediately. Do you have probable cause for a search? I don't consent. The officer barely glanced at her. We don't need your consent. You're a suspect. That's not how the law works. Danielle knew it because she literally taught constitutional law to police officers. But knowing your rights doesn't always protect you when power decides to ignore them. They searched anyway, rifling through her trunk, her gym bag, her work materials, papers scattered, personal belongings treated like evidence of crimes she hadn't committed, and the comments, muttered just loud enough for her to hear. Nice car for someone in this neighborhood. Bet she can't afford this legally. The assumptions, the disrespect, the casual cruelty of being presumed guilty because of the color of her skin. Danielle stood on the sidewalk in her event dress, now dusty from the roadside, watching her dignity get violated in real time. Neighbors emerged from nearby apartments. Phones came out, recording, witnessing, because this scene was all too familiar. I'd like to speak to your supervisor, Danielle said clearly, firmly, still maintaining her composure. One officer actually laughed. You think you're somebody? You're just another. He didn't finish the sentence. But everyone there heard what he didn't say. Everything Danielle had spent 5 years teaching officers not to do was happening to her. Every violation, every assumption, every abuse of power. She was living the exact scenario she trained departments to prevent. A black SUV pulled up behind the patrol cars. The police captain, responding to what dispatch had logged as a routine suspect stop. He stepped out, assessing the scene with the practiced eye of a veteran commander. 2 officers, 1 civilian woman. Small crowd with cameras. He walked toward his officers to get their report. Then he saw Danielle's face. Recognition hit him like a physical blow. Dr. Freeman? His voice changed completely. The shift was so dramatic that both officers froze, confusion spreading across their faces. The captain walked past his officers directly to Danielle. "Ma'am, I am so deeply sorry. Can you please tell me what happened here?" Danielle took a breath, still composed, still professional. "Despite everything, I was pulled over for allegedly matching the description of a robbery suspect. These officers searched my vehicle without my consent and without probable cause." The captain's expression hardened as he turned to face his officers. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of authority and barely controlled fury. "This is Dr. Danielle Freeman, Deputy Director of the city's Civil Rights Division." The silence that followed was deafening. The woman they profiled, searched illegally and mocked. She literally wrote the training manual on how not to do exactly what they'd just done. For 5 years, Danielle had trained police departments across Virginia on racial sensitivity, constitutional rights, lawful search protocols, and implicit bias. She conducted workshops in Richmond, Norfolk, Alexandria, Charlottesville. She stood in front of rooms full of officers and taught them the law, taught them better practices, taught them how to see people instead of stereotypes. These officers had likely sat through her training, taken notes, passed her tests, and then violated every single principle she taught them. How does this still happen? How do officers ignore the very training they receive? How does education fail so completely when it matters most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this question matters. The irony was devastating, and the captain knew it. The captain's command was immediate and unequivocal. "Return to your vehicles. Do not leave this scene. We will discuss this at the station." The officers complied, suddenly silent, suddenly aware of how catastrophically this had gone wrong. The captain turned back to Danielle. "Dr. Freeman, I cannot apologize enough for what just happened. This is completely unacceptable." Danielle didn't yell, didn't demand, just stated facts with the precision of someone who understood exactly how the system was supposed to work. "I want incident reports from both officers. I want their body cam footage. And I want a formal review of the stop under department protocol and constitutional standards." "You'll have all of it," the captain promised. "This will be thoroughly investigated." The crowd dispersed. The videos were already uploading to social media. By morning, the story would be everywhere. And it was. Civil rights official illegally stopped and searched by officers she trained. The headlines wrote themselves. The Richmond Police Department had no choice but to respond swiftly and transparently. They announced an immediate internal investigation. The officers were placed on administrative leave pending review. Public outcry was intense. How could officers violate training they'd received? How could the woman who taught them become their victim? The body cam footage was released with Danielle's consent. It confirmed everything. No probable cause. No consent. Aggressive conduct from the start. Implicit bias on full display. Comments captured on audio. The violation documented frame by frame. Within 2 weeks, the investigation concluded. The officers had violated department policy, constitutional protections, and professional standards. The recommendation was clear: suspension and mandatory retraining. But here's where it gets truly remarkable. The retraining program, the civil rights curriculum Danielle herself had written, the officers who profiled her, who searched her car illegally, who mocked her dignity, they would now sit in a classroom learning from the work of the woman they'd violated. They'd study her curriculum, pass her tests, learn the lessons they should have remembered the first time. The irony was almost poetic. The press conference came a week after the incident. Reporters packed the room, cameras everywhere, questions flying. Everyone wanted to know, how did Dr. Freeman feel? What did she want to happen to the officers? Her answer stopped the room cold. "I'm not angry. I'm disappointed. But I'll keep teaching, because that's how real change happens." No bitterness. No calls for termination. No demands for revenge. Just a quiet, steady commitment to the work. She could have sued, Could have walked away from police training entirely. Could have said, "I'm done trying to teach people who refuse to learn." Instead, she said this: "If I stop teaching because some officers don't listen, then the ones who want to do better lose access to that education. That's not acceptable to me. The work is bigger than any one incident, even when that incident is personal." Her poise became the story within the story. Grace under pressure. Commitment despite violation. Strength that didn't require anger to be powerful. The national conversation ignited. CNN, NPR, national news programs, podcasts, panel discussions. Everyone wanted to understand. Why does training fail? How do biases persist despite education? Danielle's message was consistent. This isn't about two officers. It's about systemic issues that training alone can't fix. But training is where change begins. We need training and accountability. Education and consequences. Both, not either or. She advocated for specific reforms. Mandatory body cams, which had proven her case. Civilian review boards. Supervisor notification for all matching description stops. Real consequences for violations. Follow-up assessments to ensure training actually changes behavior. She turned her humiliation into a teaching moment for an entire nation. So here's my question for you. Could you respond with this kind of grace after being profiled, searched illegally, and mocked by people who should have known better? Be honest in the comments, because what Danielle did wasn't easy. It was extraordinary. The Richmond Police Department didn't just investigate and move on. They implemented real policy changes directly because of what happened to Danielle. Mandatory supervisor notification for all matching description stops to prevent pretextual profiling. Enhanced documentation requirements for vehicle searches. Probable cause had to be articulated clearly. Quarterly bias training instead of annual, because one session a year clearly wasn't enough. And Danielle's traffic stop became a case study in her own training programs. Not to shame the officers publicly, but to show what happens when training fails, to demonstrate consequences, to prove that accountability matters. Other Virginia cities took notice. Norfolk adopted similar reforms. Alexandria updated their policies. The conversation spread beyond Richmond. National police organizations invited Danielle to speak at conferences. Her presentations packed rooms. Chiefs and commanders wanted to know, how do we make training actually stick? How do we create culture change, not just policy compliance? Danielle's proposals were specific. Accountability systems with real teeth. Peer intervention training. Teaching officers to stop each other when they see violations. Community oversight with actual power. Regular assessments to measure whether behavior changes after training. 1 year later, Richmond reported measurable decreases in discriminatory stops. Not perfect. Change is never that clean, but measurable. Documented. Real. Danielle still drives those same streets. Sometimes with caution, always with purpose. Because she knows that her work, teaching, advocating, pushing for progress, matters. Not because it's easy. Not because it always works. But because giving up means nothing changes at all. Here's the truth that Danielle's story teaches us. Grace doesn't mean accepting injustice. It means responding to injustice with purpose instead of just pain. Danielle didn't ignore what happened to her. She didn't pretend it was fine. She used it to demand better. From the department, from the system, from the community. The lesson isn't be nice to people who violate you. The lesson is that change requires both accountability and continued engagement. Walking away feels satisfying in the moment, but staying in the fight, even when it's personal, even when it hurts, that's what creates transformation. This happens every day to people who don't have Danielle's platform, her credentials, her resources. Black drivers pulled over for matching descriptions that are really just their skin color. Searches without cause. Dignity violated. And no captain arriving to make it right. So believe them. Support them. Demand better from the systems that are supposed to protect everyone equally. If Danielle's response inspired you, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel for more stories of people who transform injustice with grace, strength, and unwavering commitment to change. Share this video with someone who needs to see what strength really looks like. Not loud, not angry, but unshakable in purpose. And comment below, how would you have responded in her situation? Be honest, because understanding how hard this was makes her grace even more powerful. They pulled over Dr. Danielle Freeman for matching a description. She responded by rewriting the definition of grace under pressure and teaching an entire nation what accountability looks like. The work continues, and so does she. Have you or someone you know experienced racial profiling? How did you respond? Backhand Dindex pointing down your story matters.